Welcome to Sleep Workshop. Tonight, we slip beneath the polished surface of the past and touch the fragments that refuse simple answers. Listen as history's quiet questions guide your thoughts into calm discovery. Somewhere beneath drifting sand or silent stone, a king still waits for the world to find him. Picture Babylon in early June, 323 BCE. Heat shimmers above mud brick walls. Palm fronds stir beneath a sky the color of hammered bronze. Inside the royal palace, torches sputter, while a fever-struck conqueror lies motionless beneath embroidered linen. Alexander only, 32, master of 3 countenance dies, without final burial orders. Court physicians embalm his body in honey, myrrh, and cinnamon. Gold thread wrappings sparkle beneath the glare of oil lamps, taller than a war elephant. From that moment, the trail twists. An official cortege departs Babylon months later. 24 wagons carved with griffins, 60 armored horses draped in purple, a train of incense bearers whose braziers perfume the evening air. Contemporary chronicles claim the procession aimed for Macedonia, yet midway across Syria, Ptolemy, one of Alexander's most trusted generals. Some say ambition, others claim prophetic dreams. The most celebrated corpse of the ancient world is rerouted toward a city barely founded, Alexandria. There, according to Diodorus and Strabo, rises the Soma Mausoleum, whose marble piers support violet porphyry walls, whose ceiling glitters with mosaic constellations. For 3 centuries, rulers, philosophers, and tourists descend spiral stairways to gaze through crystal panes at the embalmed king. Julius Caesar pauses amid civil war to pay homage. Augustus kneels, kisses the corpse, and, legend says, accidentally snaps its desiccated nose. Caligula steals the breastplate. Septimius Severus clamps the doors shut to deter further souvenir hunters. Then, suddenly, text goes dark. After Augustus, description fades, swallowed by earthquakes, tsunamis, and the unblinking patience of time. Alexandria sits upon trembling ground. Quakes fracture sea walls. Mediterranean swells surge down marble streets. In 365 CE, tsunami hurls grain ships onto rooftops and scatters warehouses like dice. Later, as Christianity crowns new moral horizons, pagan shrines face destruction or repurposing. Shrines crumble into lime kilns. Gold icon frames become candlesticks. Statues feed furnaces that cast church bells. By the 10th century, Arab geographers describe columns fallen like toppled chessmen, but mention no royal tomb. Modern archaeology reopens those ghost streets. In 1850, Mahmud Bey maps Ptolemaic cisterns beneath Ras El Thani. He writes of waterlogged corridors whose niches resemble funerary alcoves, but finds no sarcophagus. In 1995, Polish teams excavating near the Serapeum photograph a vaulted hall whose floor lies 3 meters under sea level, flooded to the ceiling by a briny water table that engineers pump. Walls crumble as fortress walls. Ground-penetrating radar outlines rectangular voids, but each shaft collapses into slurry before a camera can descend. Scholars argue, did Ptolemy's mausoleum stand here? Or beneath the modern Nabi Daniel Mosque, where local legend insists a giant stone coffin lies sealed behind Ottoman brick? Frustration migrates outward. Byzantine chronicles hint the body left Alexandria when Christian riots threatened pagan relics. Perhaps monks spirited the sarcophagus to Constantinople, only to lose it during the Fourth Crusades, plundering in 1204. Others follow. Plutarch's fragmentary note that Alexander desired final rest near the Oracle of Ammon in Siwa oasis. Desert nomads tell of a walled cave inscribed with horned bulls and gilded lions, forbidden to trespass under penalty of madness. Satellite thermography lights up anomalies across Libya's dunes, yet field expeditions find only wind-scoured granite and tracks of migrating ibex. Forensic science tries new angles. Mitochondrial markers extracted from royal burials at Vergina provide a Macedonian baseline, but purported Relixan embalmed finger in Venice, a skull shard in split-yield, mismatched haplogroups, molecule-bimolecule spectrometry of resin smears on crystal fragments, recovered from antique dealers, reveals cheap pine pitch, not the exotic cedar oil described by ancient embalmers. Laser-induced fluorescent scans, half-submerged limestone, blocks beneath Alexandria's cornice, searching for voids large enough to house a sarcophagus. Algorithms stitch sonar echoes into ghostly rectangles, hopeful silhouettes, more often than trustworthy cavities. When divers probe, they find amphora shards, Roman coins, and rusting anchor flukes, but no crystal coffin. The absence itself becomes an invisible monument built of rumor, scholarship, and the restless gravity of possibility. Imagine Alexandria just before dawn. Sodium lamps flicker above shuttered spice stalls. A briny breeze carries gull cries over tram lines that clatter like loose swords. Beneath cracked asphalt, 5 meters down, a limestone corridor might stretch untouched. Its walls painted with Hellenistic blues, now faded to charcoal. At its center waits a chamber roofed by slabs carved with winged thunderbolts and Medusa eyes. Perhaps a sarcophagus lies there, gilded, honey-sealed, still bearing an iron diadem, whose facets catch the occasional flashlight blade of a sewer inspector who never notices. Or perhaps the tomb disintegrated centuries ago, its jewels dissolved in salt, its bones mingled with shattered amphorae on the harbor floor, unnoticed by divers drifting among seagrass and rustidin anchors. The unanswerable question keeps historians in orbit, like planets tethered to an unseen sun. Egyptologists from Oxford contend that discovering the tomb would recalibrate every timeline of Hellenistic embalming. Isotope chemists at the Sorbonne argue that resin analysis might reveal trade routes through Arabia and Nubia. National economists imagine a tourism windfall rivaling Tutankhamun's cash. Urban planners, fretting about subsidence, dread the tunnels such excavations would breed. Meanwhile, Alexandria lives atop uncertainty. Tuk-tuk drivers honk past Greco-Roman catacombs. School children memorize geometry within sight of a lighthouse's drowned foundation. Each year, crane arms lift new apartment blocks while drill rigs map bedrock once trodden by Ptolemaic priests. At night, scholars gather on balconies overlooking the eastern harbor, debating loggia by loggia whether new seawall construction should pause for archaeological sonar. Bureaucrats file permits, divers descend. Silt clouds blossom, then settle. Unchanged Alexander sought immortality through conquest. Instead, he attained it through ambiguity. his empire fractured. His generals carved kingdoms from limb to limb. The riddle of his resting place endures, generating dissertations, funding grants, and late-night conversations whispered over glowing screens. The missing tomb acts like negative space in art, the shape defined by what is not present. Scholars trace its outlines precisely because the center remains void for now. Let the enigma stand silent, immense, exquisitely unresolved. Alexandria's streets hum above their buried secret. Sonar pings echo under flooded catacombs, and the Mediterranean exhales salt across breakwaters that protect a mystery as old as empire itself. Before the flood, they ruled for tens of thousands of years, or so the tablets say. Picture early evening on the alluvial plain of lower Mesopotamia, a horizon dense with reeds, and the wet hush of river channels splitting into countless fingers. Somewhere within that watery labyrinth, a slight hill of sun-baked debris breaks the flatness. Lanterns glimmer atop the mound as workmen pack their tools. A foreman snaps a reed stylus into a wad of damp clay and bakes it over a brazier, creating yet another label for yet another artifact lifted from the dark. Among the day's finds rests a four-sided prism of river silt, its edges still crisp, its surfaces alive with tight rows of cuneiform, each wedge pressed by the sure hand of an old Babylonian scribe almost 4 millennia ago. The text begins, where ordinary chronologies end, after kingship descended from heaven. Kingship was in Eridu. There follows Ululam, first king of the first city, seated on a throne for 28,800 years. Then Alalgar for 36,000, Enmenluana for 43,200, Enmengalana for 28,800 again, Demused the shepherd for 36,000. 8 names accumulate 241,200 years of rule, longer than all of recorded history by a factor of roughly 30, before a terse dividing phrase splits the tablet. Then the flood swept over. Thereafter reigns contract. A king of Kish rules 1,500 years, the next 900, then 120, then 80. By the 10th dynasty rulers preside for decades and die. By the 20th, 4 spans hardly longer than modern incumbencies. History narrows from mythic grandeur into manageable ledger columns, yet the tablet holds every scale at once, like a map whose left edge covers a continent and whose right edge outlines a single farm. Why would scribes anchor mythic eons to mundane dynastic bookkeeping? The first fragment of what scholars call the Sumerian king list surfaced in the 1880s, when crews clearing Ottoman drains in Nippur sliced into a rubbish pit of broken tablets. That piece was thumb-sized, yet even its half-erased wedges transmitted a recognizable sequence of dynasties and floods. Since then, more than 20 exemplars, tablets, prisms, cylinders have emerged from Susa in Iran to Nineveh on the Tigris, each copy a slightly different verse of one chant. Some are pristine. Others survive in shards no bigger than an almond, each fragment a pixel in a lost mosaic. No 2 recensions match, line for line. Some replace monarchs, others splice new dynasties. A few compress reign lengths to suit regional pride. Yet a common backbone persists. Kingship descends from heaven, cycles through 5 sacred cities, pauses beneath floodwater, then resumes, leaner but unbroken, Philologists lay transparencies of these copies atop one another and highlight matches in blue, additions in red, gaps in gray. A rainbow grid appears, proof that no single master copy ever ruled. Instead, there was an evolving ecosystem in which scribes borrowed, trimmed, and replanted the list to serve immediate needs. The rain figures resist simple propaganda. Enmangalana rules Bad Tabira for 28,800 years. Why choose such unwieldy magnitudes instead of rounded, mythic spans? Mathematicians working in base 60 note that 28,800 equals 60 squared times 8. 43,200 equals 60 squared times 12. The antediluvian kingship seems encoded in neat sexagesimal blocks, perhaps echoing schematic calendars or grand astronomical cycles. Epigraphers counter that such tidy products could be retro-calculations by later priest astronomers, rather than relics of early Sumerian numerology. Still, the coincidence lingers. Another lens sees the list as dramatized theology. Sumerian cosmology loved symmetry. Heaven mirrored earth, temple ground plans mirrored starfields, ruler years mirrored divine rhythms, embedding myth large numbers. Inside administrative rosters may have felt essential, a ritual tacking of everyday governance to cosmic scaffolding. A ledger lacking eternity would have been dangerously incomplete. Across 3 continents, readers still argue whether the king list is chronicle or cipher. Victorian theologians printed Genesis beside the prism, persuaded the floodlines, confirmed one another. 20th century fringe theorists took the extravagant rains as proof of alien custodians or antediluvian superscience. Modern social feeds remix the list into neon infographics, compressing 4,000 years of debate into half-minute bursts set to electronic beats. Serious inquiry presses on. Sediment cores from the Persian Gulf show a rapid sea level pulse roughly 6.5 millennia before the Common Era, enough to inundate marshlands and reroute the Euphrates. Paleobotanical layers reveal buried reed beds drowned by silt. In that era, one can see how collective memory might stretch such trauma into a cosmic deluge, but rains lasting 36 millennia. Geology offers no such clock. Digital epigraphy adds fresh tools. Neural alignment models measure wedge textures, grouping tablets by stylus fingerprints. These clusters sketch teacher-student lineages, showing how a Nipper workshop could prune or embellish lines, then pass the edited text along trade routes to Mari or Ashur. Each node on the textual family tree bears subtle political agendas. Each wedge is both character and vote. Field archaeology still chases alignment. At Eridu, magnetometry traces concentric mud brick platforms. The deepest stratum, pottery bare yet rich in shell, predates standard chronology by centuries. Dr. Hiba Qasim of Basra suggests that oral memory of such primeval layers fed the impossible ages assigned to first kings. When temples inherit foundations older than pottery, time itself must expand. Meanwhile, chemical assays of tablet clay revealed trade currents. A prism in the Ashmolean Museum contains silt from Susa, not Sumer, hinting Elamite hands copied Mesopotamian chronology to claim equal antiquity. Bitumen residues map to specific Euphrates oxbows, identifying scribal workshops with pinpoint accuracy. Each discovery adds tesserae, none completes the mosaic. Evening fog coils through Uruk's ruins. A curator, in a mobile lab, photographs a newly surfaced fragment under raking light. 3 lines remain, and one name stands clear. Enman Luana of Bad Tibira, 43,200 years. The fragment fits no known copy, a brand new echo of an ancient song. Our grip on antiquity stays provisional. Perhaps that is the King List's quiet lesson. Chronology, like clay, is malleable. Press 1 wedge, the surface shifts. Press 100, the record might last millennia. Between mythic ages, measured in tens of thousands of years, and administrative decades tallied in grain rations, the list stretches a bridge wide enough for gods and accountants alike. Whether cipher or chronicle, propaganda or prayer, it reminds us that memory's architecture is built as much from wonder as from fact, and its doors remain ajar to every patient reader. Beneath a landscape of gentle vineyards and quiet chapels, entire avenues of darkness still breathe with ancient footfalls. Asterisks stand for a moment on the high volcanic plateau of Cappadocia in central Anatolia. Early morning wind rattles dry vines strung between low stone walls, and the first light paints the fairy chimney spires in muted rose and ash. From above, the land seems peaceful, almost empty, punctuated only by the distant call of a dove echoing from rock-cut churches. Yet a few steps beyond a nondescript courtyard, a narrow stairwell descends through weathered tuff, and with every pace the sunlight fades, replaced by lamp glow and the faint mineral scent of deep earth. Down, down, down past chambers, carved smooth as the inside of a sea shelpin's Derinkuyu, an underground city vast enough to shelter a small nation, a hive of tunnels and halls winding through volcanic stone like the hidden chambers of some colossal fossilized Longyou. No official chronicle names its first architect. Legends claim it predates the Persian Empire, perhaps even the late Bronze Age Hittite kings. Local stories tell of divine intervention, angels loosening stone as soft as bread to deliver persecuted monks. Yet geology sets the earliest likely, chisels no earlier than the Phrygian kingdoms that thrived here during the first millennium before the Common Era. Those early workers realized the region's tufa, compressed volcanic ash deposited by long-dead supervolcanoes cuts like firm cheese when fresh, then hardens into near concrete once exposed to air. With patience and stone picks, they could mine negative architecture. Rather than stacking bricks upward, they dug spacious cathedrals downward, layer upon layer, leaving pillars and ribs to hold the ceiling aloft. Every corridor seems shaped, not only by hands, but by fears of armies, of plague, of winter, of extinction. Derinkuyu's footprint sprawls beneath modern streets where school children bike to class, unaware of the void below. Archaeologists estimate 8 principal levels, some say more each, linked by steep stairs, narrow enough to force invaders to descend single file. Cylindrical shafts drop 4 scores of cubits, doubling as both ventilation and wells. At the top of critical junctions lie massive circular doorstones, monoliths taller than a person, carved so precisely they can be rolled into place to seal passages. Each stone plugs its corridor like a cork, leaving only a fist-sized hole through which defenders once speared anything foolish enough to approach. Exploration teams from the mid-20th century mapped wine presses, oil-crushing pits, chapels, communal kitchens blackened by centuries of hearth smoke, even livestock stables with tether holes still visible in the floor. One chamber houses a vertical schoolroom. Carved benches lined the descending staircases, so a teacher could stand at the base and address pupils arrayed above, the stone amplifying her voice. Another hall features tomb-like niches, perhaps temporary, coffins for those who died while their friends waited for marauders to leave the surface. Why dig so deep? Historians weave multiple threads. First, Cappadocia lies on routes armies marched again and again. Assyrian campaigns pushing north, Persian satrapies policing rebellious satraps, Roman legions sweeping east, Arab raiders probing Byzantine borders, Seljuk horsemen cutting trade roads to Constantinople. When banners appeared on the horizon, local Christians and earlier residents alike vanished underground, rolling the doorstones shut, lighting oil lamps with cotton wicks, surviving for weeks on stored grain and goat milk cheese. Oxygen flowed through vertical shafts, smoke channeled sideways into hidden vents that evaporated among surface rocks, betraying no sign of life to scouts above second. The plateau suffers winter winds that roar like furnace bellows turned to ice. Subterranean air remains steady near 10 degrees centigrade year-round, making the lower chambers a natural root cellar and refuge. Families could ride out snowstorms while storing seeds in clay jars, the pulse of life banking low until spring. Some ethnographies argue that entire villages likely spent cold seasons underground by custom, surfacing only to tend livestock and prune vines when the sun returned. Third, water security. Cappadocia lacks abundant surface streams. Rainfall filters through porous tuff and pools in faults deep below. By tunneling downward, engineers reached cisterns immune to drought or sabotage. One legend recounts an Ottoman tax militia lowering rope buckets into a courtyard, only to hear a distant voice mocking them from the darkness a villager, 2 levels beneath, directing the bucket sideways into a hidden reservoir. The city sleeps now, yet its architecture remembers every alarm ever sounded in the stone. Modern visitors feel a hush beyond ordinary silence. Electric bulbs spaced along walkways cast warm halos, yet around each corner, pitch-black corridors branch toward silent depths barred to tourists. Guides pause beside chisel marks, still crisp on doorway lintels, their rhythms revealing the work crews breathing centuries ago. Pick, scrape, exhale, shift, stance, repeat. In a reverberant gallery, locals call the choir hall. Step gently, and you may hear flutter echoes bounce like ghost hymns among pillars. The porous walls drink sound, giving the place an unworldly calm, as if all chatter stays in one's throat. Archaeometallurgists examine soot on ceiling curves, identifying pine resin, olive oil, later whale oil, imported by Byzantine traders. Radiocarbon clocks on charcoal confirm phases of expansion. Initial lower chambers, perhaps Phrygian, deeper annexes Roman, broad worship halls, Byzantine, narrow defensive doglegs, Seljuk. Each culture added a new layer downward, as if history itself were being measured in substrata. Fear compacted into geology. Surveyors from the Turkish Department of Culture lowered ground-penetrating radar, antennas through skylight grills in 1985, bouncing microwaves into darkness. The signals suggested further voids past the known 8th-level rooms, larger than tennis courts. Yet drilling was halted to avoid collapse beneath a kindergarten playground directly above locals' whisper of secret tunnels linking Derinkuyu. 2 other underground cities, such as Kamakli, nearly 10 kilometers away. Some geophysicists consider the notion plausible. Lava flows once formed, slab-like tough, that a determined crew could indeed burrow through. Legends speak of refugees fleeing from one city to the next without surfacing, carrying torches for a whole night's walk under the earth. In 2014, a construction project for Nuka's apartment blocks uncovered yet another entrance shaft, a short walk north of Derinkuyu's ticket office. When archaeologists rappelled into the cavity, they found fresco fragments, unlike earlier discoveries, Crusader Ara crosses, flanked by Greek inscriptions naming St. George. The chamber linked to an uncharted stairwell dropping farther than any previously opened work halted, funding tangled in bureaucracy, and the shaft was resealed with steel bars pending future study, leaving residents to speculate what waits still deeper. Researchers debate population estimates based on ventilation capacity. Some suggest as many as 25,000 souls might shelter simultaneously, not counting livestock. Others argue that lower oxygen near the bottom levels would restrict total occupancy to a few thousand, rotating between sectors. Still, even conservative numbers dwarf many surface towns of medieval Anatolia. Bread ovens, fermentation vats for grape must, and latrine shafts descending to infiltration pits show planners understood both comfort and sanitation far beyond simple cave hiding. Navigation remains a marvel. Unlike limestone caves that wander naturally, Derinkuyu's layout follows a purposeful logic defense in depth. Main corridors bend every 20 paced strides, forcing invaders to slow. Blind niches host spear-bearers ready to stab from darkness, yet those same bends break wind flow, preventing lamp flames from guttering. Central axes align roughly north-south, simplifying orientation without compasses. Side chambers cluster around communal wells, ensuring each residential node had water within earshot. In effect, the city functions like a living organism. Throat narrows to prevent choking. Lungs ventilate heat. Stomach stores grain. Vertebrae of stairs connect each layer. Walk now with a dim lantern along one corridor. On the left-hand wall, incised, notches mark jar storage. On the right, small alcoves once cradled baby goats, whose bleats would alert sentries to prowlers. Farther down, charred lintels suggest a controlled fire, perhaps a last-stand deterrent when raiders finally breached. A door. 2 armored Seljuk coins lie fused in green patina near the ash, dated by script style to the 12th century, silent testimony that even those hardened warriors sometimes ended there. Campaigns in torchlit confusion. Noise once thundered here. Pounding hoof echoes overhead, bells of panic under vaulted ceilings. Communal prayers mingled with the bleating of sheep herded into safety. Then quiet would reign after the great disc stones rolled shut, and the city would enter a twilight cycle of scheduled lamplight. Rationed grain, whispered songs to comfort children who asked how long before sunrise. That hush lingers still. Visitors sense it humming in pores of the rock, No ancient parchment records, Derinkuyu's final abandonment. Possibly the Ottoman centralization of village structures made underground retreats unnecessary. Maybe peace along trade routes reduced raids. Or maybe the cost of maintaining tunnels no longer used weighed more heavily than nostalgia. Over centuries, upper shafts collapsed, entrances filled with wind-blown grit, and only shepherds remembered vague tales of stairways leading where daylight never reached. Rediscovery came in the 1960s when a homeowner renovating his basement knocked through a wall and felt a draft of cool air. He shone a flashlight into a blackness that swallowed the beam, and rumor says he did not sleep that night, convinced he had opened a doorway to the underworld. Authorities investigated, and the modern unveiling began. Archaeology rarely gifts such intact testimony. Most ancient cities erode into ruined mounds. Derinkuyu remains three-dimensional, its corridors awaiting only footsteps. Yet, for all the mapping, vital questions linger. Who first imagined an entire metropolis beneath vineyards? How long did it take, and what terrors drove families to carve deeper each generation? Were the longest stays measured in days or seasons? For now, Derinkuyu keeps its oldest answers tucked into silent corners where chisels once bit. Visitors climb back to the sun, blinking at the brightness, surprised by birdsong that feels strangely thin after the timeless calm of volcanic stone. Above-ground life resumes, while beneath them, the hollow heart of Cappadocia waits, cool and patient, holding on to stories that still ripple like groundwater through the darkness. Far below gray northern waves, an outline the size of a small hill lurks like a question mark carved in stone. Picture the Gulf of Bothnia on a midsummer evening. The Baltic surface lies almost glassy, disturbed only by the lazy wake of a research vessel crossing from Sweden toward Finland. Gulls glide in slow circles overhead. The low sun paints the horizon with molten pewter rather than gold. On deck, two treasure hunters turned marine surveyors monitor a screen that scrolls in monochrome, smooth bands representing seafloor mud, abrupt spikes marking boulders and wreck timbers, and then suddenly an unexpected hemisphere of darkness. A sonar shadow unlike the usual scatter of glacial debris. The year is 2011, though the moment feels older, tinged with the thrill of discovery that Galileo knew when a moon first crossed his telescope lens. The operators, members of the Ocean X team, murmur disbelief. The object appears nearly circular, roughly 70 meters wide, perched upon a pillar-like ridge, its edges straight in some places and sharply right-angled in others. In the weeks that follow, media outlets erupt. Tabloids dub it a Baltic Sea UFO, while more restrained press describe a geological anomaly resembling a landed spacecraft. Sonar images, contrast-boosted and color-mapped, spread across social feeds, showing what looks remarkably like a rocky version of the Millennium Falcon. Some viewers pick out features: a central dome, a fin-like spur, a corridor leading to a second, smaller disk. The speculation machine ignites. Is it the petrified ruin of Atlantis, a Nazi anti-gravity device, a prehistoric Stonehenge lost beneath glacial meltwaters? Or is it merely a lump of hard rock sculpted by Ice Age currents and wishful thinking? Every pixel of grainy sonar becomes a battlefield where geology, folklore, and pop science clash. To weigh the claims, begin with context. The Baltic Sea is a drowned landscape of ancient river valleys, flooded when melting ice sheets raised. Global oceans near the close of the last glacial maximum, roughly 10,000 years ago. Its brackish water part salty, part fresh supports fewer wood-boring organisms than fully marine coasts. So wooden wrecks and prehistoric timbers sometimes lie astonishingly well preserved. Stone monoliths bearing cup marks from early farmers have been documented on submerged ridges, proving that human structures can indeed hide below its opaque surface. Yet, the Baltic is also strewn with elusive, house-sized boulders plucked by glaciers from Scandinavian mountain roots and deposited at random on the seabed. Many rest upon drumlins, cigar-shaped mounds of till-forming natural pedestals. A handful even split after deposition, creating flat tables or stacked terraces. Marine geophysicist Dr. Henrik Lehn of the University of Bergen reminds interviewers that glacial sculpting can produce circles, ridges, even near right angles when meltwater channels abrade softer layers around harder cores. In his words, a circle is not proof of design. Nature is an architect with no fear of geometry. Nevertheless, the Ocean X anomaly resists easy classification. First pass sonar showed a step-like perimeter banding the disk. Subsequent sweeps hinted at an internal cavity. Divers descended with low-visibility cameras. Their footage revealed coarse basaltic texture and what looked like soot-blackened surfaces. Headlines multiplied. Baltic UFO scans show burn marks. Volcanologist Dr. Inga Marner countered that bacterial films often darken stone in Loxygen water while fluidized. Sediment flows can leave ripples resembling scorch traces. Still, uncertainty sells faster than caution. Proponents of artificial origin point to an adjoining runway, a flattened trench trailing the disk for nearly 400 meters, as if an object had skidded before coming to rest. Geologists reply that subglacial floods routinely gouge such troughs and that the trench's alignment matches regional ice movement rather than a descent vector from the sky. The debate thickens like Baltic silt. Each sonar transect yields motifs both sides claim as proof. The deeper mystery may lie not in the stone, but in the human mind's hunger to etch stories onto every shadow. Consider dive logs from the follow-up expedition in early summer of 2012. Water temperature hovered near 4 degrees Celsius. Visibility was barely a meter. Divers reported malfunctioning electronics, cameras flickering out, even numb fingertips from an unexplained static tingling. Conspiracy forums seized upon these notes. Electromagnetic anomalies, they insisted, shielded the craft. Ocean X technicians later clarified most failures owed to drained batteries and condensation. Yet the narrative momentum had shifted. From that moment onward, technical glitches would forever be folded into legends of alien metal. Meanwhile, samples told a quieter tale. Thin section slides under polarized light showed coarse plagioclase feldspar, pyroxene, and olivine, textbook basalt, crystallized from lava perhaps 1 billion years old. Strontium isotope ratios matched volcanic provinces in central Sweden, supporting the erratic boulder hypothesis. Hydroacoustic scans refined the object's height, 8 to 12 meters, from base to dome. not the looming fortress early renderings suggested. Still, supporters argued that basaltic crust could coat an inner machinery long corroded beyond recognition. Funding, ever fickle, began to wane. Salvage sponsors turned attention back to sunken spirits and lost amber cargoes richer in resale value. The anomaly remained, visited now and then by research vessels, but largely left to silt and speculation. Academic journals moved on, comment sections did not. Each year, fresh composite images, sharpened by AI filters, circulate under new headlines. Satellites reveal hidden Baltic Stargate. Geologists sigh and reopen their sediment cores. Yet dismissing the fascination would miss a larger point. The Baltic anomaly, real or imagined, illustrates the dialogue between hard data and mythic impulse. Sonar sees by echo, returning distances as grayscale dots. Our eyes connect those dots into narratives shaped by cinema, folklore, collective longing. A disk in mud becomes a spaceship because our era dreams of ancient visitors. A trench becomes a skid mark because earthly drama prefers crash landings to glacial hydraulics. This same urge once carved dragons into Norse runestones and nymphs into Greek karst caves. Where there is an outline, imagination will furnish inhabitants. In the quiet moments when research crews rest balautics, sipping coffee while fog closes, in some confess the anomaly's very ambiguity makes it precious. A strictly catalogued seafloor would feel lonely, stripped of wonder, whether the disk proves mundane or marvelous. Its sonar portrait reminds explorers that the ocean still scribbles unread pages across our planet's diary. For the anomaly endures, not merely as basalt or rumor, but as question. It waits beneath. Silt, visited by cod and slow treks of isopods, its circular platforms gradually softening under chemical weathering. Perhaps a future generation, armed with sub-bottom profilers and autonomous micro-ravs, will peel back the layers and pronounce a final verdict. Or perhaps storms will bury it beneath migrating dunes before conclusive evidence surfaces, preserving mystery the way mythologists prefer. Above, ferries continue to cross from Stockholm to Turku, their passengers unaware they sail over a story, half written in igneous minerals and half in human need for awe. Radar sweeps the horizon for icebergs. Sonar pings the shipping lane, but somewhere outside the plotted route, a silent form rests, neither confirmed marvel nor dismissed oddity. In that liminal category, it exerts a subtle gravitational pull on our collective curiosity, proof that even in an age of satellites and seafloor charts, the world retains spaces wide enough for wonder. Most ancient texts arrive brittle as autumn leaves, yet this one arrives armored in hammered metal, whispering of hidden gold. Wind back time to the spring of 1947 in the rocky ravines of Qumran. A Bedouin shepherd idly flings a stone into a cave and hears the crisp shatter of pottery. That accident will unseal a library of parchment and papyrus, now famous as the Dead Sea Scrolls. Yet one scroll will stand apart, so stubborn it must await 1952, and the methodical patience of the Jordanian Department of Antiquities. In Cave 4, archaeologist Henry de Contenson lifts from dusty floor a dark green cylinder capped in mineral crust. Unlike leather or papyrus, this scroll is pure copper, sheet thin. inscribed not with hymns or prophecy, but with terse directions, in the ruin that is in the valley of Acre, under the steps leading to the east, 40 cubits, a chest of silver and gold. The copper scroll lists treasure after treasure, more than 60 caches hidden beneath wells, inside burial chambers, under Locustitan mounds, talents of gold, bars of silver, priestly vessels, way down its columnar prose, where parchment scrolls speak of covenant and repentance. This gives coordinates, measures, weights, though the desert itself once served as a vault. Immediately, scholars split into camps. Some see a practical inventory compiled by Second Temple priests who, fearing Roman siege, concealed the temple treasury beyond reach. Others insist it is a pious fiction, a didactic text meant to recall the spoils once entrusted to Israel's patriarchs. Every line cuts like a surveyor's stake, yet every landmark has shifted, blurring the boundary between map and mirage. Translation proved as arduous as authentication. The copper had corroded into a brittle oxide shell. Unrolling risked shattering the script. At Manchester College of Science and Technology, metallurgists used a jeweler's saw to slice the cylinder longitudinally. Over weeks, they trimmed 54 parallel cuts, releasing 2 half-shells that could open like a codex. Each interior panel flashed pale turquoise where corrosion met raw metal, revealing Hebrew letters, chiseled rather than inked. 5 scribes appear to have shared the work, judging by chisel width and stroke flare. Their script flows in a late Second Temple hand, somewhere between Herodian and Mishnaic styles. Yet the language diverges from canonical roles, where Isaiah sings in parallelism. Here, sentences read like ledger entries. In the cistern opposite, the eastern gate, 42 talents lie under the 3rd masonry course. Weights such as kicker and mina appear with arithmetic precision. Distances are described in cubits and stadium lengths. A parchment scribe might draw letters in ink with forgiving loops. A copper engraver must strike each glyph. The result is unornamented, almost brusquemers rather than prophecy. Geographers from the Hebrew University in Jerusalem walk the copper scroll against topography. Valley of Acre, House of Hakkos, Hill of Kolet, Tomb of Zadok. Some sites lie near Qumran, others flicker, half-remembered in Second Temple texts. Yet the landscape has shifted. Earthquakes lowered plateaus, floods rerouted wadis, Roman quarries scooped ridges into dust. An instruction reading under the ashes in the conduit on the northern side of the pool teases excavators who confront layers of Byzantine farm debris and Crusader refuse. Still, ground-penetrating radar identifies voids beneath tell mounds that align eerily with the scroll's phrasing. Archaeological sorties multiply. In 1962, Father Roland de Vaux leads a Franco-Jordanian expedition to Cave 3, trenching wadis that match clue fragments. They find pottery, bone, and Hasmonean coins, but no bullion. In the early 1980s, cryptologist Vendell Jones organizes searches west of Qumran, convinced one hiding place holds the fabled Ark of the Covenant. Bulldozers uncover storage jars, linen, and lumps of aromatic resin. Treasure hunters claim the resin is biblical persimmon used in temple rites, but chemical assays identify myrrh and pine. Gold remains elusive. Perhaps the real trove is not metal sleeping in bedrock, but the scrolls, quiet proof that memory itself can be folded in copper. Laboratory analyses deepen the puzzle. The scroll's alloy is roughly 99% copper with traces of tin. Lead. Origin. Copper's malleability. When annealed explains how scribes hammered sheets, delicate as parchment, yet its later brittleness reveals why the scroll oxidized into near. Still, under scanning electron microscopes, letter grooves preserve tool chatter like fingerprint ridges. One scribe engraved at a shallower angle, causing strokes to shimmer differently under grazing light. Philologists count orthographic anomalies, incomplete word dividers, hasty ligatures, even a single Greek letter slipped into Hebrew text, perhaps a worker borrowed from multilingual signage in Hellenistic Jerusalem. Weight values provoke further debate. One entry promises 17 talents and 3 minas of silver. Tallied through the entire list, metal sums exceed what historians estimate the Second Temple treasury contained before Titus raised it. Skeptics argue the numbers are symbolic, encoding jubilee cycles or priestly roster counts. Proponents retort that Domitian's, Fiscus, Judaicus, Tax, and Hadrian's temple projects would have required draining vast treasuries. Perhaps these figures reflect known hoards hastily dispersed in 1996. Infrared imaging at the Israel Museum revealed faint abrasion near one place name, as if the scribe partially erased an earlier word. Could that edit indicate a last-minute site substitution forced by Roman troop movements? More recently, three-dimensional micro-CT scans show microcracks under certain glyphs, implying the scroll might have been folded rather than rolled during transport, contradicting earlier assumptions about its deposition and why copper at all. Parchment decays. Sure, yet copper invites rust. One theory suggests the scroll was meant for short-term recall. Bury riches, hide a durable but retrievable key near headquarters, return once danger passes. Another posits a rite of consecration. Copper, associated with covenant altars, would sanctify the catalog, turning secular ingots into holy trust. Possibly the authors intended only priestly eyes ever to read it, expecting oral transmission to fill topographic gaps. Today, the scroll rests in a climate-controlled case in Amen. Museum placards summarize rival hypotheses. Gift shop replicas press its braille-like letters into foil for tourists. Yet search fever persists. Amateur teams wielding drones and magnetometers trek wadis at dawn, listening for metallic alarms from under caprock. So far, they find Ottoman bullets, Roman ballista stones, Bronze Age arrowheads, each artifact a lowercase whisper compared with the promised trove. Still, one cannot dismiss the allure. The copper scroll is both promise and mirage, a litany that converts geography into potential, possibility into weight. Even its copper mass seems to embody anticipation. Scholars reading its columns feel the tug of coordinates, the gravitational pull of enumerated wealth. It stands as testament that in late Second Temple Judea, someone believed treasure lay scattered among hills. Someone cared enough to record paths in imperishable metal. Someone envisioned future hands retrieving what present danger demanded be hidden, whether talents of gold sleep yet under Judean dust, or whether the list was always metaphor. The copper scroll endures in another metal entirely, the alloy of curiosity and doubt. It invites each generation to to choose a tool spade, satellite, dictionary, spectrometer, and strike at the ground or the text, hoping for a glint. And perhaps that anticipation, repeatedly minted, is the richest hoard of all. On a sandstone beam, nearly 4 millennia old, shadows of strange machines seem to hover if you tilt your head just so and let imagination ignite. Stand inside the great hypostyle hall of the Temple of Seti I at Abydos, midday. Sun filters through clear story slots, painting columns with slanted gold that drifts like incense smoke across carved capitals. The air smells of warm stone and ancient dust, a scent older than script. Along the northern lintel, above 6 weathered reliefs of pharaohs offering incense to Osiris, lies a patch of hieroglyphs darker than the rest. Tour guides lift flashlights, modern beams sweeping across ancient grooves until something singular appears, a group of overlapping signs whose outlines evoke the profile of a helicopter, tail rotor and all, hovering beside what could be an armored personnel carrier, and further along, a shape many swear resembles a jet airplane. Cameras click, visitors murmur. How could Egyptians carve helicopters? Internet forums echo the astonishment. Thumbnails of the beams circulate under lurid headings, ancient tech revealed, proof of time travelers, pre-pharaonic aerospace. Well-meaning bloggers overlay transparent silhouettes of Black Hawks atop hieroglyph photographs, lines matching with uncanny precision. A single stone inscription, eroded by centuries of desert air, becomes global proof of proto-helicopters. So the story insists, between what eyes see and what rock records lives a narrow valley where erosion, recarving, and expectation converge. To weigh the claim, one must return to Abydos in the 13th century before the Common Era, when Seti I commissioned a sprawling limestone complex to honor Osiris and to inscribe his legacy beside those of the earliest dynasties. Egyptian artisans carved hieroglyphic registers in raised relief, painting them in mineral blues and reds, knowing cartouches would outlast the reign of any rival scribes. Yet pharaohs seldom left their predecessors' monuments unaltered. Seti's son, Ramesses II, outlived his father by decades and sought to immortalize his own titulary. Instead of quarrying fresh blocks, his workmen plastered over certain cartouches in Seti's lintels, then chiseled new signs atop the smoothed layer. Centuries later, color pigment vanished, plaster flakes fell, and overlapping relief produced composite images, rather like transparencies stacked imperfectly. Egyptologists call this palimpsest phenomenon overcarving. Dr. Peter Brand of the University of Memphis notes that Ramesside artisans routinely modified Seti's monuments, merging old labors into new propaganda. Under ordinary wear, the uppermost plastered chips first, revealing traces beneath. Where 2 distinct hieroglyphs overlap, their outlines merge into strange hybrids. On the Abydos beam, one sees the lower half of Seti's inscription, perhaps the hieroglyph DJRW, doorbolt, fused with part of Ramesses's PRW, becoming of the manifestations. The resulting negative space suggests a cockpit and rotor. Nearby, a fused TP offering table intersects a broken JA ruler, producing what looks like tank treads. In short, Time has doodled illusions atop serious theology. Conservation photographs tell the story plainly. 1938. Plaster still clings. No helicopter visible. 1994. After an earthquake loosened debris, gaps widen, and the flying craft emerges. Grainy versus high-resolution images show how raking light and camera angle enhance the illusion, edges sharpening into purposeful lines under digital contrast. Human perception, a pattern recognition engine honed by evolution to spot predators. In Leaves, obliges by transforming noise into narrative. Yet the very persistence of the vision reveals how thirsty we are for threads that stitch present marvels to vanished ages. Why does the idea resonate? Because it offers continuity of wonder. Imagine that 4,000 years ago, mechanics in linen kilts tuned propellers while priests burned myrrh nearby. Imagine secret knowledge lost to desert storms, waiting for modern rediscovery. In a technological age, we long to believe ancient minds matched ours gadget for gadget, blueprint for blueprint. Helicopter hieroglyphs feed that hunger. Egyptology responds with measure. Hieratic papyri detail quarry deliveries, temple payrolls, bread rations, not rotor schematics. Reliefs obsess over chariots, boats, and cattle, but remain silent on spinning. Blades, no Middle Kingdom novel, extols sky voyages. Still, absence of evidence rarely quenches myth. Fringe theorists cite Vimanas in Indian epics, Ezekiel's wheels within wheels, Nazca runways in Peru. Abydos becomes another tile in a mosaic that forms an image only when evidence is stretched thin. Scholars counter by teaching the beams. Grammar, the original Seti inscription likely read, "He who repulses the 9 bows," a formulaic boast against Egypt's foes. Rameses's recarve inserted, "He who protects Egypt and subdues foreign lands." Layer these, erode half, and letters morph into mechanical silhouettes. Add uneven patina, and grooves deepen where dust and salt crystallize. The mind aligns angles into rotors because rotors occupy our mental furniture. Had modern war machines never flown, viewers might see ships or beetle wings instead. Conservators debate whether to restore the beam, replaster gaps to reveal Seti's intended palette. But UNESCO charters favor minimal intervention. Better to stabilize than rewrite history again. So the palimpsest remains a Rorschach test in sandstone. To some, proof of lost technology. To others, proof of lost context. Tourists lean back, squint, and decide what they need to see in dim corridors deeper within the temple. Earlier cartouches possess their own puzzles, erasures where Akhenaten's heretical Aten religion once glowed, hammer blows where Christians chiseled crosses over seated gods, soot smudges left by Bedouins sheltering from Ottoman patrols. Each layer writes over the next, leaving archaeology to untangle intention from accident. The helicopter beam is only the most internet-friendly of these palimpsests. Perhaps the greater marvel is not that stone suggests machine, but that a detail only a few centimeters wide now travels the globe in megabyte flashes, spawning debate. Across languages Seti never imagined. Every minute online, another viewer glimpses the lintel, gasps, shares. The temple thus expands its audience from priests of Osiris to billions of scrolling thumbs. Its hieroglyphs may no longer voice hymns, but they still ignite imagination. So the sandstone beam remains aloft in cultural skies, part artifact, part mirage. Researchers photograph, measure, 3D scan, and annotate. Enthusiasts continue to overlay helicopter schematics. Somewhere in between, the carved message of a pharaoh endures, that names can ride time even when meanings shift, that surfaces can carry more than one story, and that stone patient, as always, lets every eye translate anew. Across 19th century front pages, enormous bones marched from farm fields to museum cases, promising to rewrite the scale of human history. A pair of brothers clearing timber for a new barn strike something hard beneath the sod, expecting a buried log. They dig with spades until a pale curve of bone rises into daylight, much broader than a cow's rib, smoother than weathered oak. Neighbors fetch lanterns and crowbars. By dusk, the men have uncovered a full skeleton, whose skull can swallow a grain scoop, whose femur stretches almost from shoulder to shoe. Someone holds a yardstick against the bones, then drops it in astonishment. The figure would have stood, they claim, nearly twice the height of an ordinary man. Into the New York Herald, where a single column titled "Giant Unearthed in the West" promises readers that new excavations lay proofs before philosophy that races of men may once have trod our valleys like Olympian specters. Within a decade, such dispatches multiply. Tennessee farmers plow up oversized jawbones bearing intact molars. Ohio mound excavators lift burial tablets portraying warriors towering over spear-bearers. Copper mining crews in Michigan report thigh bones too thick for any living laborer. Each discovery travels east by rail and rumor, landing in lecture halls where antiquarians display bell jars holding discolored teeth. Some declare these relics remnants of a lost race described in the book of Genesis, when giants were in the earth in those days. Others point to Mesoamerican myths of long-limbed elder tribes conquered by ancestors of the Aztecs. New York showman fragrance, the tales with carnival flair, offering dime museum glimpses of petrified titans from the valley of the Great Lakes. By the time Mark Twain lampoons giant reports in rough drafts of life on the Mississippi, the narrative has already imprinted itself on North American folklore, from colonial journals to prairie campfire yarns. Unexplained bones equal evidence of prehistoric giants. Yet as quickly as fascination blooms, mainstream science pushes back. Anatomists from the Smithsonian Institution issue circulars cautioning that many giant ribs. Field agents remeasure skeletons in situ and lower claimed heights from 12 feet to something closer to 7 impressive. Yet within human possibility, newspaper errata seldom travel as far as headlines, and the myth persists, gathering layers of conspiracy whenever official institutions dismiss a find as misidentified or fraudulent. Between every museum drawer and every shuttered attic lies a liminal zone where bone, belief, and national identity tangle. Enter the Smithsonian in the early decades after the Civil War. Its basement corridors brim with crates, labeled simply mound bones, shipped from amateur excavations across the Ohio and Mississippi valleys. Many remains are indigenous ancestors from Hopewell and Adena cultures, whose burial mounds stand along river terraces like overgrown earth stars. Grave goods reveal copper gorgets, mica effigies, pipes carved as soaring birds, average stature. Among these interred souls, measures respectable but mortal nonetheless. Scattered within the collection lie a handful of unusually tall individuals, still under 8 feet, yet towering beside contemporaries. Curators note nutritional variance, pathological gigantism, and cultural practices such as cranial elongation. They catalog and shelve the data without sensational flourish. Public appetite, however, prefers drama. Sensationalist weeklies inflate each pathological outlier into a race of 9 cubits tall patriarchs. Ministers weave sermons linking giant graves to Nephilim passages. Land speculators pitch Midwestern acreage as archaeological Eden where biblical events unfolded. In Wisconsin, hoaxer George Hull sculpts a gypsum petrified man, buries it, discovers it, and profits handsomely as crowds pay to stare at what P.T. Barnum quickly clones as the Cardiff Giant. Even when analysis exposes the ruse, ticket sales continue. People marvel not only at monstrosity, but at the audacity of fabrication. Academic journals of the late 19th century attempt dispassionate synthesis. A multi-part monograph in American Antiquarian calculates tibia length against body mass, demonstrating that alleged 10-foot remains would collapse under human bone density. Yet letters to editors reply that unknown prehistoric physiologies might have included denser cartilage or reduced gravity. After all, dinosaurs reached gargantuan sizes. Why not a giant man before the flood? The argument reveals itself less about bone than worldview. Science invites revision of myth. Myth resists revision by appealing to wonder. As the 20th century opens, professional archaeology tightens excavation standards. Stratigraphic recording, radiometric dating, and osteological taxonomy replace treasure hunting. Giant announcements wane. Photographs of early skeleton displays undergo close reading, and many giants shrink when perspective illusions are corrected. Yet the myth persists underground, waiting for a new medium. That medium arrives with radio and later with cable television. Documentaries such as Ancient Mysteries of the Western Hills resurrect old newspaper clippings, layering ominous narration over sepia photos of shovel-wielding men beside elongated bones. Each episode asks more questions than it answers, leaving narrative doors ajar. Conspiracy enters through those doors. Storytellers claim the Smithsonian destroyed giant skeletons to preserve evolutionary timelines. They cite a supposed Supreme Court case, never recorded in the archives, ordering the institution to reveal hidden bones. The allegation circulates on talk shows, blog rings, and meme pages. Skeptical researchers trace the rumor to a satirical article published on an April Fool's Day. Yet retractions rarely match the reach of headlines. In the digital era, Smithsonian giant cover-up becomes a keyword string fueling algorithms. Strip away spectacle, and a quieter archaeological puzzle remains exceptional stature. Scattered across millennia, whispering of diet, disease, and social role, physical anthropology offers measured insights. Adena burial sites, indeed, contain individuals over 7 feet tall, likely suffering from genetic traits such as pituitary adenoma. Their graves sometimes hold elaborate goods, copper antlers, seashell necklaces carried from Gulf shores, signaling status. Were they revered as giants? Skeletal indicators of labor stress suggest leadership rather than manual toil. At Mound in Oklahoma, a tall, broad-shouldered skeleton lies with a headdress of engraved wooden plaques, each depicting Birdman iconography. Bioarchaeologists analyze isotope ratios in bone collagen, revealing a protein-rich diet heavy in river fish and deer, privilege uncommon in maize-dominated diets of commoners. Tall stature here reflects both genetics and nutrition across the continent. Paiute oral traditions tell of Sitka Tuleators. Lovelock Cave. Early 20th century guano miners excavated that cave and indeed found mummified remains. Contemporary Paiute elders interpret the tale not as literal giant hunting, but as cautionary memory of hostile Fremontera groups. Folklore compresses difference into exaggeration. Height becomes shorthand for otherness. The anthropologist Adrian Mayer posits that Plains tribes encountering fossil beds of extinct mammoths may have woven bone fragments into tales of giant buffalo hunters. She notes that Lakota stories describe thunder beings whose footsteps shook but whose bodies fell like hills when slain, nearly resonant with eroded mammoth femurs protruding from badland buttes. Similarly, Greek myths of titans may echo fossil sites around Crete. Giant narratives bloom, where bone out of scale with daily life breaches the ground. Modern genetics throws fresh light. Teams extract ancient DNA from dental pulp of an unusually tall Hopewell individual interred at Mound City, Ohio. The genome reveals a rare variant in the AIP gene associated today with familial gigantism in Ireland's Middlester region, tracing back to a Bronze Age ancestor. Migration models suggest prehistoric gene flow across Beringia, down through the prairies, carrying not only artifacts but alleles. Thus, each giant skeleton might signal isolated micropopulations rather than a vanished race. Yet for many enthusiasts, lab reports pale beside the romance of lost titans, haunted by a sense that past grandeur exceeds present limits. They hike remote creek beds, hoping to kick loose a gargantuan tooth. Some succeed only to learn from paleontologists. They hold a ground sloth molar. Disappointment seldom lasts. The quest, not the proof, sustains the legend. Consider a hypothetical museum drawer. New inquiry. Science would first establish context stratigraphy, associated artifacts, radiocarbon age. Legend, by contrast, would proclaim validation within hours of the first leaked photo. The tug-of-war would play out once more, internet threads spinning faster than peer review cycles. In the interplay between confirmed data and imaginative hunger, giants remain potent. They symbolize thresholds between natural and supernatural, human and monstrous, known and unknown. Whether carved into temple lintels or staged in traveling exhibitions, they magnify human curiosity. Walk now through a quiet Midwestern field at twilight. Fireflies pulse across river bottoms where mound silhouettes soften in tall grass. Below the soil, ordinary ancestors rest, some tall, some small, each one precious beyond measurement. Above, distant highway lights drift like willow wisps. In such liminal dusk, it is easy to feel why rumors of immense bones persist. Night itself stretches horizons. Imagination does the same to memory. Thus, the legend of North American giants strides onward, half fossil, half fable carrying as much about our thirst for marvel as about the bones we seek among furrows of time. Deep beneath the green lungs of Ecuador, passages of polished stone breathe rumors of metallic books no scholar has ever read. Picture the eastern flank of the Andes, where river mist unravels into the upper Amazon basin. Dawn haze lifts over endless canopy. Parakeets chatter above bromeliads, heavy with rainwater. A limestone ridge rises like the spine of a dormant leviathan, its slopes netted by lianas and strangler figs. Hidden in that tangle gapes the black mouth of Cueva de los Teos, the cave of the oil birds, named for nocturnal flyers that wheel inside its vaulted darkness. From the entrance, a vertical shaft plunges 20 or so stories straight down to a boulder floor slick with guano. Beyond lie cathedral-like galleries where no sunlight has walked since dinosaurs breathed. Local Shuar lore whispers that ancestors once carried gold plates from subterranean halls where the walls shone. Outsiders first heard the story in the 1960s, when Hungarian-Argentine engineer Juan Moritz claimed to have explored artificial tunnels striped with geometric engravings, hieroglyphic symbols. Moritz insisted the collection predated Andean empires, perhaps crafted by refugees of a forgotten antediluvian world. Journalists scoffed till July of 1976, when a helicopter bearing astronaut Neil Armstrong swooped over the jungle, heading for Taos. Suddenly, the cave's legend, walked on the moon, descends into rainforest darkness. Even skeptics listen. The expedition Armstrong joined was organized by Scottish adventurer Stan Hall, supported by the Ecuadorian Army, British engineers, television crews, Shuar guides, and a young Catholic priest ready to say Mass underground. Hall sought physical proof, squared tunnel corners, carved stairways, any artifact glimpsed by Moritz but never shown. Over 3 weeks, the team lowered ropes, installed wooden ladders. They discovered gargantuan blocks, tumbled as if from seismic convulsion. They found tilting pillars the height of cathedral bell towers. They catalogued rock strata polished to unnatural sheen, as though water had not merely flowed but scrubbed. Surfaces smooth with mindful hands, yet no library of metal plates materialized. Hall's report noted ceramic sherds from formative period cultures, a burial niche containing human bones wrapped in bark, and square post holes whose regular spacing teased the imagination. But the greatest treasure remained entirely rumor. Armstrong, interviewed later, praised the geological grandeur while politely sidestepping the metallic myth. To believers, that discretion only deepened intrigue. Travel halfway around the planet for mere limestone. Geologists offer measured explanations. The cave complex forms where acidic rainfall percolates through soluble carbonate, dissolving jointed bedding planes into wide corridors. Occasional collapse events drop ceiling blocks, creating rectangular outlines mistaken for masonry. Smooth walls reflect flood scouring during Pleistocene meltwater pulses. To these scientists, the metal library falls in line with lost canon hordes of pirate lore. Objects conjured precisely because they confirm cultural dreams of hidden wisdom, yet certain details resist dismissal. Moritz produced photographs of polygonal floor tiles fitted with fine tolerance surfaces to level, he argued, for natural bedding planes. Some visitors speak of hallways whose sides run parallel for tens of paces, an alignment unusual in random cavern development. A documentary team in the early 2000s filmed walls with scooped recesses resembling shelves. Light glints off mica flecks and pyrite crystals, turning stone to ghostly metal under headlamps. The camera pans, and for an instant, anyone can imagine rows of copper-bronze folios waiting beyond the next corner. Between dripping stalactites and flashlight beams unfolds a debate about who gets to define evidence and whose memories are inscribed in rock. Shuar elders maintain that the cave served as a sacred refuge long before European boots arrived. Oral tradition recounts battles with Inca invaders who coveted subterranean riches. Some tales end with elders collapsing hidden passages to keep treasures safe from the Sun King's soldiers. Anthropologists caution that treasure in native idiom often means spiritual potency, not bullion. A gold object's value lies in its story, not its weight. If plates once existed, they could have been melted for ritual, distributed as bride wealth, or hidden deeper after the Moorish publicity storm. Critics highlight Moorich's inconsistent testimony, who later deny knowledge. In later affidavits, he claims Vatican emissaries warned him to remain silent. When pressed to produce a single plate, he cites tribal oaths preventing removal. Conspiracy literature blossoms. Some authors propose that Moorish smuggled artifacts to Swiss vaults. Others assert that Armstrong retrieved samples under diplomatic immunity. Powerful groups hoard them. Genuine archaeological surveys continue. Ecuadorian speleological teams mapping branch passages have found spear points, obsidian flakes, and rock shelters containing carbonized palm nutshells, radiocarbon dated to more than 5 millennia before today. Human presence, yes, but hallmarks of daily foraging rather than scriptoria. Laser scanning of corridor profiles reveals curvature consistent with phreatic dissolution, not chisel. Chemical assays of wall polish detect microbial biofilms secreting acids that etch stone smooth. Each dataset narrows the plausible, yet none seals the case. Simultaneously, linguists parse the concept of library, the Spanish term morich, used Bibliotheca Metallica, might translate native metaphors to literally. Metallurgy in Amazonia includes hammered gold foils bearing animal iconography. To a storyteller, repeating patterns on plates could be writing. Absent phonetic systems, such imagery still encodes mythic cycles. Thus, fragments, once dazzling in torchlight, might resurface, misidentified, in private collections of pre-Columbian art. Military archives add another layer. Declassified British memos reveal that Hall's expedition carried experimental ground-penetrating radar prototypes. Shaft, yet poor resolution, prevented interpretation. The instrument's magnetic pulses spooked oilbirds, sending flocks thundering through tunnels of chaos omitted from televised footage. Those echoes may still bounce in memory, urging future field scientists to rescan with LiDAR drones and muon tomography in search of chambers the first survey missed. Even if no metal plates exist, Cueva de los Teos remains a biological labyrinth. Biologists catalog troglobitic spiders with translucent exoskeletons, blind cavefish feeding on bat guano bacteria, and fungi that glow faint turquoise, casting spell light across guano dunes. Oilbirds, unique among avians for echolocation flight, roost in recesses where guano piles mound like snowdrifts. Their chicks, once harvested for fatty meat, lend the cave its name and echo its theme, darkness nourishing. A myth can be empirically empty, yet culturally full fuel for quests that yield other riches. The Armstrong expedition, though treasureless, banked geological data, avian counts, guardians. In that sense, the metal library already gave knowledge, only not in the format seekers expected. Perhaps legacy matters more than ledger. Twilight now gathers over the jungle. At the cave mouth, warm air exhales, laced with guano musk and the metallic temps of wet limestone. A flashlight beam catches leafcutter ants marching single file, their burdened silhouettes miniature echoes of larger expeditions. Inside water drips through calcite fangs at intervals slow as breath. Somewhere in the unmapped dark, mica still winks like hidden ink. Whether the metal library is wrought by ancient smiths or by the imagination's furnace, its promise endures, urging the next rope team to descend, the next hypothesis to take shape. Whole mountains can keep secrets for 2,000 years, then surrender them in a single gasp of receding water. Travel in thought to the rolling hills of Zhejiang province in eastern China, a landscape quilted with rice terraces and bamboo groves. In early summer of 1992, a farmer from Xi'an village leans over a small pond that locals have always believed to be bottomless. Curious whether fish might thrive within, he persuades neighbors to rent a diesel pump and drain the water. Hour follows hour. Dragonflies circle the lowering mirror. Then the surface sinks below the lip of stone. And astonishment, the pond is no pond at all, but the mouth of an immense underground chamber. Its walls chiseled into crisp ridges, like the inside of a cosmic seashell. Word spreads, pumps roar. At adjacent ponds, by autumn, villagers have exposed a network of man-made caverns, carved into solid sandstone, each the size of a modest cathedral, ceilings soaring beyond the reach of torchlight. They call the site Longyou Caves. In all, 12 caverns emerge, their interiors dry and echoing, untouched by silt, as if sealed yesterday. No tools are found, no inscriptions, no soot on the ceiling. Only the unmistakable signature of human labor, parallel furrows etched into every wall and pillar. Each groove the width of a thumb, descending in perfect rows from ceiling to floor. The silence of the caverns is louder than any legend, for not a single dynasty record breathes a word of their making. Chinese chronicles are famously meticulous. They note eclipses, earthquakes, even the price of tea in provincial markets. Yet scroll through the Zizitongjian, the Book of Han. The local gazetteers of Kuzhou Prefecture nowhere lurks. Mention of colossi hewn from stone beneath Phoenix Hill. Geologists date the sandstone to the Cretaceous, but that says nothing of the excavation era. Carbon samples from floor sediment contain only modern detritus, washed in after villagers drained the chambers. Lacking charcoal or bone, archaeologists consult the style of chisel marks. Each furrow slopes at a consistent angle, suggesting picks of bronze or iron. That detail narrows the window from the late warring states onward, but spans to millennia of imperial history. Mathematicians run LiDAR scans, converting wall ripples into digital point clouds. Surface modeling reveals that every groove follows geometric consistency. The distance between furrow centers hardly varies across 30 meters of wall. Someone planned, measured, and trained laborers in a unifying protocol. Estimating required. Rock removal leads to staggering figures, almost 1,000,000 cubic meters, if one sums all chambers. Suppose an artisan with iron tools frees a cubic meter in a day. An army of 10,000 diggers would still labor 3 full years, yet no imperial edict commands such works. No corvée tax lists mention cavern duties. It is as though builders vowed secrecy and kept it. Theories bloom like wild orchids. One camp proposes flood storage cisterns, their scale masking hydraulic genius. Hydrologists test water tightness. Sandstone drinks moisture. The caverns seep. Others picture imperial granary school, secure, hidden from bandits. Agriculture. Historians remind that grain molds quickly in humid Zhejiang summers. Some conjure military garrisons or treasure vaults. Yet, without ramps or stairs, how would carts descend? The only entrances are vertical shafts once filled with water. Folklorists gather oral tradition. Elders speak of long dragons carving winding palaces underground. Children sing rhymes about bottomless ponds where spirits dwell. Such tales often sprout from real architecture, now forgotten. Still, dragons explain shape, not purpose. A small stone relief discovered near one shaft depicts horsemen and banners, its style reminiscent of the Eastern Han. Might the caverns honor a defiant warlord who preferred silence to surrender? Romance, perhaps. Proof, elusive. Sometimes the most faithful measurement of a monument is the echo it leaves in those who wander its halls. Step inside, Cave 11, nicknamed the Deer Gallery. The air cools a dozen degrees. Distant drips fall into unseen pools. Pillars rise like hushed giants, supporting a ceiling ribbed with the ubiquitous chisel motif. Laser surveyors count the grooves, 40 grooved lines for each meter, each line descending at roughly 60 degrees. Squint, and the pattern resembles waves lapping a beach frozen into sandstone. Acousticians clap. Echoes linger almost 4 seconds before fading into a velvet hush, ideal for ritual chant. Did ancient choirs sing here? Further underground, of chambers interconnect in cruciform plan. Low reliefs carved on pillar bases show stylized birds and what may be cloud scrolls, motifs popular during the 6 Dynasties period. Yet the lines are crude, perhaps scratched later by squatters. Nearby, archaeologists discover mud wasp nests calcified into floor corners, their interior sediments containing fragments of Song Dynasty ceramics. Travelers must have sheltered here a millennium ago, ignorant of the cavern's even older origin. Engineering. Curiosity spikes. How did craftsmen maintain orientation? Survey of floor inclines reveals that drainage channels slope gently toward still-sealed umps. Stone stairs, revealed where villagers broke accidental breaches, rise in perfect orthogonal sets. Where daylight shafts open, sunbeams align with solstice, sunrise, accidental quirk, or a megalithic intention. Solar mapping during midsummer supports alignment within 2 degrees. Conservation teams face ethical dilemmas. Tourism offers revenue that could fund research, yet each footfall stirs microdust. Each selfie flash bathes ancient furrows in bleaching light. Already algae creep along paths where moist breath accumulates. Heritage planners propose elevated walkways and controlled humidity, mirroring Lascaux protocols, but funds lag. Meanwhile, night tour companies market candlelit mysteries of the lost caverns, their paraffin fumes blackening ceilings that weathered to millennia unscathed. Scholars petition for ground-penetrating radar surveys of still-flooded ponds nearby. Initial scans hint at unexcavated voids. A new question surfaces. Were the drained 12 caverns the full set, or mere antechambers leading to deeper catacombs? Government permits stall, citing risk to aquifers that feed village wells. The debate stirs social media. Some users call for immediate exploration before secrets erode. Others invoke feng shui taboos, warning of dragon veins disturbed in Beijing. The National Library hosts a symposium titled Invisible Empires, Subterranean Megastructures in Chinese Antiquity. Papers compare Longyou to the rock-cut Buddhist grottos at Yungang and the mausoleum pits of the first emperor. Yet Longyou differs. No statues, no inscriptions, only space, the negative silhouette of unimaginable labor. A keynote speaker suggests the caverns exemplify the Taoist virtue of Su, emptiness that is fullness. Discussion circles back to utility. Emptiness alone rarely mobilizes thousands of pick-wielders. Or does it, if the void itself was meant to? Focus key, harmonizing landscape and power. Night settles over Shihan-Beikun. Street lamps cast pale cones on shuttered convenience stores. Frogs trill by rice paddies, edging the abandoned ponds. Beneath the village, the caverns breathe their slow mineral respiration. Each groove catches stray photons from maintenance lights, turning furrows into frozen ripples of moonlight. Whatever purpose guided those furrows, the storage of grain, the concealment of scripture, or the silent veneration of spaceall, who enter feel a hush deeper than unanswered questions. For now, the Longyou Caves remain a pendant of stone mysteries, suspended beneath bamboo roots, awaiting the steady patience of future lanterns and the next generation of careful footsteps. In the cradle of Mesopotamia, small serpentine faces gaze from clay that has cooled for 7 millennia, inviting modern eyes to imagine scales beneath the dust. Long before Sumer's ziggurats climbed toward constellation gods, a quieter settlement thrived on the Tigris-Euphrates delta, Ubaid. There, amid reed thatch houses and irrigation ditches, potters fired vessels unlike anything yet seen, painted in copper-green chevrons and black zigzags. From the same kilns emerged enigmatic figurines, elongated heads, slanted eyes, tapered snouts, and shoulders draped in patterned cloaks. Some cradle infants, others brandish scepters. All share an almost reptilian graces, though stylized. Lizards chose to masquerade in human posture. Archaeologist Harry Reginald Hall lifted the first examples in the early 20th century. Later excavations at Eridu and Yor uncovered more, each from strata firmly dated to the Ubaid period, 5,000 to 4,300 years before the Common Era. Unlike the voluptuous Venus figurines of earlier prehistory, these stand slender, sexless, save for subtle breasts or loincloth ridges. Their surface burnish catches desert sunlight in mottled glints, giving the illusion of scales beneath thin clay skin. Academic journals noted the anomaly, yet filed it under ritual unknown. Mass media, decades later, would label them reptilian gods of Sumer. Between scholarly caution and fringe enthusiasm stretches a gulf as wide as the ancient Marchesane. The figurines stand on its shifting shore. Mainstream interpretation sees in the stylization mere artistic abstraction. Snouted heads may mirror crocodiles known along swamp canals. Large eyes could evoke protective deities of fertility. Hatching marks resemble ritual tattoos rather than scales. The idols might represent spirits guarding household granaries, their serpentine features symbolizing renewal, much as snakes shed skin. Yet, alternative theorists offer bolder scripts. Author Zakaria Sitchin cited them as evidence that visitors engineered early Mesopotamian civilization. In online forums, high-resolution photographs sprout red circles around eyelid ridges and cranial crests, proof of ancient reptoids. Documentaries splice close-ups with computer morphs of humanoid lizards, weaving tales of hybrid dynasties ruling through priest-king intermediaries. The figurines, once dusty side notes, become viral celebrities memes dressed in flashlight. Glimmer dot laboratory analysis tempers excitement. X-ray diffraction of clay reveals locally sourced alluvial mud mixed with crushed shell. Firing temperature sits below 800 degrees Celsius, a modest village kill. No exotic alloys, no magnetic anomalies. Where patterns show, some figurines were handled frequently, their burnish thinned by fingers, suggesting domestic veneration rather than temple exclusivity. Microscopic residues inside hollow torsos contain bitumen traces, perhaps one ceiling. Wooden pegs for mounting figures atop household altars. Still, enigma endures. Why the lizard visage when other Ubaid idols lean human? Why the infant in swaddling held by a reptilian female? Symbolic studies note that marshland cultures revered waterborne life. Lizards, able to traverse land and water, signified liminality between elements, between life and afterlife. Newer research compares motifs to later cylinder seal depictions of Ningshita, a serpent god guarding celestial gates. Thus, figurines might prefigure myths crystallized centuries later, their forms half-remembered by succeeding scribes. The clay does not speak words, yet its silence is thick with possibilities, each viewer hearing a different whisper. Visit the Iraq Museum's dimly lit Mesopotamian hall. Behind armored glass, for Ubaid figurines stand on felt like refugees from a forgotten fable. School children peer uncertainly. Tourists raise phones. A curator's placard offers cautious prose. Anthropomorphic zoomorphic idols. Ubaid culture. Nothing more. Still, imagination flares. In the hush, one senses the delta mists where artisans once pressed thumbs into wet clay, coaxing elongated snouts from earthen coils. Did they laugh at the result or bow? Did mothers touch the figurine's cool surface, praying for children to survive fever seasons? Elsewhere, crates recovered after recent conflicts await conservation. Within padded cells of foam lie shattered fragments, a snout, a torso incised with diagonal chevrons, a tiny hand clutching a lump once shaped as staff. Teams painstakingly scan shards, align edges in three-dimension software, and model missing pieces. Each reconstruction sparks debate, restore or display rupture. The breaks themselves narrate a century of looting, displacement, and return. Meanwhile, satellite imagery maps subsurface traces of yet unexcavated Ubaid houses, their outlines faint beneath plow scars. Ground-penetrating radar pulses promise foundations still holding forgotten kilns. Archaeologists hypothesize that hundreds more figurines sleep in those tell mounds, each one a letter in an alphabet no Rosetta Stone yet translates. Funding arrives. Slow, deserts expand. Yet hope persists that context, hearths, graves, offerings will clarify function. Neuroscientists studying pareidolia or reflex to see faces note that ambiguous stimuli invite projection. The figurine's slant-eye geometry primes the brain toward reptile inference. If artisans sought to depict stylized humans with eye paint and ritual masks, erosion may have sharpened angles into snouts. Digital morphometrics overlay original silhouettes with erosion vectors, showing nose ridges thinning, jawlines sharpening over millennia of salt efflorescence. Even science, then, concedes some mystery sprouts from whether not intention, but intention or not. The figurines now straddle worlds: archaeological artifact, pop culture icon, spiritual emblem for those who trace unseen bloodlines in humanity's past. And perhaps their greatest gift lies therein, reminding us that evidence alone cannot throttle wonder. Instead, it fertilizes possibilities. You have journeyed through hidden tombs and copper maps, danced among phantom plagues, descended into candlelit caverns, and contemplated reptilian faces fashioned in primeval clay. The past remains vast, its unanswered questions a gentle hum in the background of our waking thoughts. Yet mysteries need not foster restlessness. They can cradle us, rocking curiosity into quiet fascination. So, as you set aside these stories for the night, allow each riddle to soften into a distant echo. Let speculation dissolve into calm, the way torchlight fades after explorers leave a chamber. History will keep its secrets patiently until dawn. If these twilight journeys brought you peace and wonder, tap the like button, subscribe, and share. Sleep Workshop with anyone who drifts off. Best 2 stories half told. In the comments, tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. There we read every note. Good night and sleep well.